goes to Phillip.
Okay, morning. Wow. Is this too loud? Morning, everyone. That's better. My name is Phillip Kruger. I'm an architect that still codes. I work at MMI Holdings, specifically in Multiply. And this talk is really about our journey on breaking up the monolith towards smaller distributed services. Just before we start, we're going to go through quite a lot of slides. We're going to look at a lot of code. The slides is available at that bit.ly URL, and the code is available in GitHub. We are all doing distributed computing. We might not have yet admitted it to ourselves, but we are. And even if we really not doing distributed computing, meaning we are running a system on one server and one server only, we can all agree that our future is distributed. And the late Peter Hingis is putting it much more elegant than I can. There's videos online that I can recommend. One is called Our Distributed Futures, and the other one is called How Conway's Law is Eating Our Job. And in that talk, he explains things like Handel's law, which says that if something is a specific size, the only way to scale is to make it smaller. He talks about Moore's law, that things are getting cheaper and faster, so the cost gravity. Conway's law that says that your system will ultimately mimic the message structure of your organization, and Murphy's law that if something can go wrong, it will go wrong. And all of this means that our future is distributed, and we need to get better at it. The Wikipedia definition of a distributed system says a distributed system is a system whose components are located on different network computers, which then communicate and coordinate their actions by passing messages to each other. And just by this definition alone, you know that we are all doing distributed computing, but not necessarily very good. So how did we get here? So long ago, we started sharing data by potentially copying a file to some space and then share it with some other system that synchronized it to their database. And then we said, we'll do this every now and then, maybe daily. And then we modernized a little bit and we started sending messages, these messages on a queue, so it might have been a bit more real time. And eventually we said, well, actually, I just want to call a service so that I can get the data. And before we knew, we are doing distributed computing. So one of the good things about microservices is that they treat distributed computing and decentralization as a first-class citizen, solving the problems that comes with distribution. Sam Newman wrote this book, Building Microservices, and I can highly recommend it. And there's a video online, the link is down there, where you can, if you don't want to read the book, watch the videos. And in this book, he discussed 8 principles. And we're going to reference these principles throughout the talk. Because what we're saying is that if we can be good at microservices, we will be good at distributed computing. So we're going to run through these principles quickly. The first one is model around your business domain. And this speaks more about microservices than distributed computing. But basically, this tries to say, how do I define this boundary of my service? One of the principles would be software that chains together, stays together, and good fences make good neighbors. Build a culture of automation, because we are now in a scenario where we have many servers. Configuring these guys by hand won't work, so you have to start automating. Hide your implementation details, very specifically, hide your database. Do not spill implementation details over the boundary. I find that if you design a system, it's much easier to hide your implementation details if you start in the middle and go out rather than bottom up, meaning don't design your database first and then go all the way up to the boundary, because then there is the option that you can spill database details over the boundary. Embrace decentralization. So I'm going to quote Conway's law again. Organizations which design systems are constrained to produce designs which are copies of the communication structures of those organizations. And James Lewis has got a few good videos online, and one of them is what he calls the inverse Conway maneuver, where you can create the architecture that you want by creating the organizational structure that mimics that. Deploy dependency is fairly self-explanatory, so your deployable units need to be self-contained and autonomous. Focus on the consumer first, and this is not necessarily a consumer like an end user. If you are creating services, your consumers are the services. So documentation becomes important, and again, creating a clean boundary is important. If you're in a situation that if somebody wants to use your service, that you first need a meeting to explain what the fields is that they need to pass, you potentially failed. Isolate failure. So this is talking about the beware of the distributed monolith. So what's also called the cascading failure problem, where you are you broke it up into pieces, but you are still tightly coupled. Diane Marsh has got a very good video where she explains how Netflix does it. And I'm sure you all know about the chaos engineering and the chaos monkeys that they have. But the point is that you need to fail fast, you need to become good at failing, you need to minimize the blast radius, and eventually become self-healing. Be highly observable, again, because your services are now distributed, it's not easy to track transaction, so you need to make sure that you are observable. Okay, and that brings me to Eclipse MicroProfile and how we are using it to make sure that we can build sound, resilient systems. So Eclipse MicroProfile is this is their website. There's quite a lot of resources on there. They have a presentation that you can download, and we're going to reference part of that presentation in this talk. So what is Eclipse MicroProfile? It's an open source community specification for Java microservices. It's individuals, it's vendors, it's organizations, they all work together to create the specification. So it's very similar to Java E, or now Jakarta E. It's an umbrella specification, meaning it's a specification of specifications. And we're going to go through all of these specifications. These are some of the members of MicroProfile, and interestingly enough, Microsoft has joined, and Lightbend. These are two new vendors that joined, but all of the usual suspects are there. Okay, so at the moment, most of the implementations support MicroProfile 1.3, and this is the APIs under that umbrella. So we're going to reference an example application where we have a membership service where you can enroll a new member. We have a profiling service where we profile this member, so we understand how did you drive this morning, did you go to the gym, what did your Fitbit say, did you burn a few calories, all of those usual stuff that we do at Multiply, and a user service which combines the two and gives the user a way to authenticate itself. And then for fun, we're going to store the membership in a relational database. We're going to store the profiling in a non-relational data store. We're going to run membership on a Payara microserver. We're going to run profiling on Wildfly-swarm that has recently been renamed to Thorntail. And we'll run the user service on OpenLiberty. For even more fun, we will run all of this on this Raspberry Pis, which is up front here. I don't think we're going to get enough time to get to the demo, but we'll have it at the MMI stand and you can play with it. But in this, you can see the Payara's running on the yellow Pi, Wildfly on the red one, and OpenAPI on the blue one. So, getting started with the first three APIs, CDI, JCP, and JAX-RS. And this forms the base tool set that allows you to build applications, enterprise applications. These are all APIs that traditionally is also being developed under Java EE. So JAX-RS and JPA, if you've used Java EE before, you would know this is how I declare a REST endpoint by basically annotating to say that this is the path. And a service like this, for instance, is the membership service, and I can say where it's available, what operations I'm doing in it, and so on. What I'm also adding here is a provider which will translate a constraint violation exception, which is the exception thrown by beam validation, which is also a specification under Java EE, to a HTTP response code. So in this case, I am responding with a precondition failed, HTTP 412, and in the reason header, the message that came from validation exception. This is all normal stuff that we kind of had already in Java EE. In this example is where I convert a event to JSON. JSONP is also an API that we've had, and a fairly easy way to create a JSON object that I can store in Elasticsearch. And in this example, this is just to show CDI. We have a request scope in, and I'm using CDI events to fire an event when I've stored a successful event. Okay, so with this in mind, this base tool set, what can we pick? Yes, we can use this tools to build a model around our business domains. And this allows us to hide our implementation details. On the boundary, I now have REST, so HTTP, and JSON. So next we'll look at the config API. So all applications need to be configured, and as I said, especially if it's distributed, you need to be able to automate this, and you want to decouple the configuration from the code so that you can change the configuration without changing the code. So what I have here, this is a CDI producer that creates the client to Elasticsearch. So this is normal CDI, and in this case I want to externalize the connection details to my Elasticsearch server. So what I do is I use normal CDI, add inject, and I annotate it with add config property, the name of the property, and if I want the default value. And the same, and now I can reference it in the code, and the same for any other properties. And that's basically all I need in my code. What I can also do is I can get hold of the actual config object by just injecting it. And then I can get all the property names, I can get all the sources that's providing properties to this config, and obviously the value. So by default, the specification defines three config sources that all implementations have to support: system.get properties, system.get environment, and a properties file inside the meta-inf of the deployable unit. You can, of course, also write your own, and you can decide where in this slot, where does it slot in there. There's a fallback mechanism, so it will first try to find it in your source, and then maybe see if it's consistent properties, and eventually boils down to the default value in your code. So as an example, if I want to write a config source, in this case I'm just writing a config source that displays config in memory. I basically just implement config source. I tell it what order it should take part in. In my case, it will first try and find the property in memory, and then I give it a name, and then obviously a way to get the value. Simple as that. So what you can do is you can write your own source that potentially look at etcd or somewhere in Kubernetes if you want to externalize it into something like that. What I also did with the memory config is because it's memory, the only way to configure it is to expose it with REST and then change the value during runtime. So I have this REST endpoint that has a way to add and get values. By default, the config API comes with support for strings and booleans and ints and longs and URLs and all the normal stuff, but you can also write your own. So in this case, this is an example of writing a source that allows me to inject a list. And then basically I can use it like this, and now my type is a list. And then if I use it somewhere, it will be, in my case, a comma separated file. But you can externalize any object that you want. I have examples of an actual JSON object, so you can, it's fairly powerful what you can do. So what can we tick? Definitely culture of automation. This allows us to externalize this configs and automate the creation of the environment. Next, we're going to look at health check. It's a fairly basic API. It just states the probe the state of the server, decide whether it's up or down. Some of the goals that this API have is that it has to be compatible with the cloud platforms, and it's specifically built for machine-to-machine use. So basically, all that this API will do is it will say, yes, I'm healthy, or no, please restart me. To take part in this, if your service includes, it can include more than one, but it has to include a health check, so it will annotate it with health, a normal CDIV, implements health check, and then you implement. In this case, this is the one I'm using for the membership service where there's a relational database, and in my case, I am checking the validity of that connection. I'm also externalizing the timeout using the config API. And then you can also pass a bunch of metadata with this response if you want. In my case, I'm just passing details of the database. And obviously, if the server is down, I want to give it a thumbs down, and I'm adding the reason in the metadata. So this is the JSON that you'll get if you hit /health on any of the services that implement this. The outcome is up, and then the metadata around it. I've also included some health checks that just check the basic state of the machine, so the heap, memory, which again I can externalize what is the definition of this should be down. So in my case, if it's 90%, it should declare itself down. There's one that uses threads, the system load, and non-heap memory. So this allows us to firstly be highly observable, and secondly allows controllers like the Kubernetes controller to decide when should the server be restarted. Okay, next we're going to look at metrics API. So like we said earlier, it's important that your system creates metrics so that you can monitor it better. The metrics API defines 3 types of metrics, base metrics, which all implementations have to implement, and this will give you all the normal stuff like the memory, the garbage collection count, it's got threads, all the thread stuff, class loading, and information about the operating system. So by default, if you're using MicroProfile, you already have an output, metrics output that gives you this information. The vendor of the implementation can add vendor-specific metrics, and then you as an application developer can add application-specific metrics. So to add application-specific metrics, this is the membership service, and I want to make sure that I record how long the get all memberships method take. And that's as simple as annotating it. And in In the other methods, I'm just counting how many times the method has been executed. It's also fairly simple. So in our example, I have a Prometheus server. The metrics API supports the new Prometheus markup by default and a plain JSON markup. We've configured it to look at the metrics URL on these three servers and then create a nice dashboard in Grafana. So this is an animated GIF. You can see in this case my membership service is up, the other two are down. These are the requests on membership. So there's the count, add count API. There are deleted ones, so there the delete came up. And then this is base of the machine itself. So we've looked at timed and counted, but there are a few other annotations that you can use to create these metrics for your application. Okay, so what can we tick on the principles of microservices? Definitely highly observable, and focus on the consumer first. The consumers of our services now has an endpoint to check the metrics of our application. Okay, that was metrics. Next, OpenAPI. I'm sure you've all used Swagger by now. It's a way to document your REST endpoints. In the beginning, there was quite a few. I know there was Rummel, there was API Blueprint. They still exist, by the way, Waddle. But eventually, they all came together and said, we need to standardize this, and it's standardized under the OpenAPI initiative, under the Linux Foundation, and the base of version 1 of OpenAPI, which is actually version 3, is Swagger. So Swagger 3 supports OpenAPI. Then the OpenAPI of MicroProfile is then a standardized way to activate this in your code. So this is our normal endpoint, as we discussed earlier, application path API. And now I'm adding this, and if you've used Swagger annotations before, this should look fairly similar. So this is just a way to add some documentation. And then in the code itself, I can now give it a tag. I can declare the operations. I can declare what responses I'm expecting. And I can even declare the object type that it returns and give it a schema, so that that's documented. So if you go to OpenAPI, you'll get the YAML by default created by your code. And then if you go to, if you add Swagger UI, you can get a nice UI where you can then allow the developer to test, try it out. I'm sure you all know this. So this is, I made a call to get my membership. So what can we tick now? Definitely allow us to continue to build services that are on the business domain and focusing on the consumer first. This gives a consumer of your service an easy way to test the service, and it helps us hiding the implementation details. So that's OpenAPI. Next, we're going to look at REST client. So if you've used Java E before, Java E7 included a JAX-RS defined client, which gave you a fluent API. And what this does is it adds on top of that a more type-safe client. So in our example, the profiling service, before it stores an event that says Phillip drove like a maniac this morning, it will get membership to check that Phillip exists. So in that case, I need to be able to call the membership service. I declare an interface, which I annotate with register REST client, and I return the type-safe object. You can also do the reverse of, on the server side, I want to make sure that when I get a HTTP response go back, that I translate it back to a Java exception. And that's how I can register providers. And the rest of the annotations is normal JAX-RS annotations, the same ones that you would use on the server. You would also notice that I only included the method that I'm interested in, even though the service has many other methods. So the provider to map the exception, again, similar to on the server side, add provider, and then a way to map response to throwable. So to use it, normal CDI, add inject, adding at rest client, and that interface. And then I can use it as if it's normal Java. So basically, what this gives us is, typically on REST, you either return a POJO, which is the result of your query, or an exception. We translate that to either a JSON file or a HTTP response code. It goes over the wire with REST, and on the other side, we get JSON and HTTP response code, and we want to bind it back to either an object or an exception. So what can we tick? Focus on consumer first. It's very easy to now take part in an environment where there's a bunch of REST services. And this also allows us to decentralize because I can now do this. JWT propagation. So security is quite hard to do over a distributed system. Because most of these services are stateless, you have to transfer the state with every request, the security state. And you want to, on the other side, make sure that you take that security state and get it back to normal Java security, not only for authentication, but also authorization. So the influences and goals on this API is all the stuff, the standards that's out there at the moment, OAuth 2, OpenAPI Connect, and JWT. So in my head, the easiest way to explain this and how this works is if I go to a carnival like this, I buy a ticket at the ticket booth, and maybe they give me a stamp on my hand, a blue butterfly or whatever the stamp for today is. And if I show that to the operator at the right, he says, yes, you can come in, or no, you can't. And tomorrow we change the stamp. It's obviously not that simple. Part of this token that I carry with me has information about me. It has information about what am I allowed to do, and potentially information that you want to add yourself. I can recommend this video by David Evans, Deconstructing REST Security, where he goes into detail on how they got to the solution, to the specification. He was I think it's the specification lead for this specification. So in our example, we're going to have a user that is going to firstly go get a token, and he's going to use normal basic authentication. Obviously, you can add whatever your security model is. The user service will use a private key to encrypt a token with all the information in and send it back. And then the user can include that token when it is requesting services from the profile service. The profile service will use the public key to decrypt it, change it back to normal Java security, and allow the user in. So this is the user service. I'm securing the API token URL, and I'm doing it with basic authentication. In the token service itself, this is a normal JAX-RS service that I also described in OpenAPI, and this is normal Java, the roles that are declared, and by default everybody is denied. And in the service, then I say which roles is allowed to get in here. And then I take the username and the roles and pass it on to the service that creates the token. And then I return the signed token. So this is me going in, this is basic authentication. And there's my token. So I can now use this token. This is the stamp on my hand, and show this everywhere. This is a way kind of show what's in the token. This is just a browser plugin, but you can also see the parts. Here I'm copying the public key, and this allows me to show, yes, the signature is valid. So if you look at a job token, it's made up of 3 parts. The header part that basically just declares the type of token and what algorithm has been used, and then the payload, which is really what we're interested in. The groups are in there, my username are in there, and then the signature itself. You can also add, this is standard JOT, but you can add your own claims if you want to pass information along. So on the profiling side, I now want to decrypt this token. Firstly, I want to add this to my documentation so that the consumer knows what my security model is. So this is OpenAPI, where I add a new security scheme, and I basically say this is a bearer token in the header. And then this annotation adds a JWT security. And then I'm back to normal Java security. In the service itself, again, I'm adding to the OpenAPI. I'm expecting a new response code, which would be 401, not authorized. And then I'm adding, mapping this security back to the security of JWT I declared earlier. And then I'm back to normal Java. So what I'm doing here is I'm first going to try and not have a token. So I should get a 401. Again, so what I've done is I have a JAX-RS provider that maps that exception to a 401 error. Now I go grab the token we generated earlier. You'll see that this is new. That's because I added that documentation to Swagger. I can now add the token, and now the token is part of the payload, and I get my events. So we also want to pass the token along. So if the profile service makes use of the membership service, it must pass the token along. Membership service has its own copy of the public key, will decrypt it, set the Java security, and the response. So what can we tick? Definitely allows us to decentralize, because security was one of the big problems in distributed computing. And it allows us to deploy independently. So next we'll look at open tracing. So because our services are all over the place, we need to be able to trace the request through all of these services and tie them back together. Open tracing is an open standard out there that's supported by many trace servers, and the Open Tracing API is the standard way to output this. These are some of the tools that support Open Tracing. I'm sure you know some of them. So in our case, we have a Zipkin server, and we want these services to report the traces to that Zipkin server. To do that, annotate the message with @traced and the name of the trace that you want to create. And then you'll see something like this. This is not a real screenshot, but this is then all the services that's there and the trace and how long it took. And now you can monitor it. So we can tick making it highly observable, and again it allows us to decentralize. Okay, so lastly, fault tolerance. Because we are now a distributed service, we cannot rely that the services that we're calling is available, and we need to find alternatives to make sure that we can still build resilient services. I'm sure you might know Histrix of Netflix. I think it's one of the most popular libraries out there for fault tolerance. There's another one called Failsafe, and this was the influence on this API. So, some of the annotations that we're going to look at, timeout, fairly self-explanatory, it defines a timeout. a retry, a strategy to retry, fallback as an alternative solution, bulkhead to isolate failures, and a circuit breaker. Okay, so starting with timeout, this is the membership service, and I'm saying that if I haven't replied in 3 seconds, then throw a timeout exception because then something's wrong. I know I should be able to respond by then. So to simulate this, I'm also adding, add to my documentation that a new response code that I expect is a 504. And then I'm mapping the timeout exception with the JAX-RS provider to a 504. And then to simulate this, I'm using my previously created memory config store REST endpoint to set this variable to true, which will activate this code and sleep for 10 seconds. But this could be a developer that put some code in production and suddenly made it slow. Okay, so this is the membership service. This is just a normal case, so we haven't activated the bad code yet, and I get my response very quickly. Now this is the REST endpoint, so I'm changing that to activate bad code to true, so the config will now change to true, which means if I try it again, it will sleep 10 seconds, although I will respond in 3 seconds with the gateway timeout, and if you look at the reason header, I get the timeout exception. So that's all good and well, and this helps, especially when your service is being called by a bunch of other services, like the case where profiling calls get membership to fail fast. But what should profiling do now? So let's look at the retry annotation. So in this example, I went and played a game of squash. I wore my Fitbit device, and the Fitbit device reported to the profiling service, Phillip just burned 312 calories while playing squash, and we don't want the Fitbit device to wait for us to first process this, so we're going to just say, thank you, we hear you, and then we will try and see does Phillip exist, and store the event in the event store. But what happens if the membership service is now not available? So what I can do is, first of all, to make sure that this is a non-blocking service, I will return a 202, just saying I accept, and I must make sure that this is a non-blocking call. So in my event logger, firstly annotate with asynchronous to make sure it's non-blocking, and then I can add an at retry where I can define, so what is the rules for the retry. In my case, I'm saying every 10 seconds for a maximum of 5 retries, try and do this again. So if this service fails, we'll wait 10 seconds, start again. So in our example, what we're going to do is we're going to try, the service is down, we'll wait, we'll try again, we'll wait, and maybe the service is back up. Maybe they were busy with a deployment or something. And the third time, lucky, we end. And we continue with life, storing the event. So what I'm doing here is I'm doing a post, I'm adding that event that said that I played squash, and at the moment it's still down because that flag, the config flag is still up, but I responded with a 202, and in the logs you can see I'm getting an error trying to log it, and it's trying every 10 seconds to try again. And now I'm changing that config back, so removing the bad code, so the timeout is gone, and now it should continue with life. So now it's stored. So this is all good and well if they came back within my specified retries, but what if they didn't? So what if I tried the third time and the service is still down? And I try a fourth time and I try a fifth time, and now what now? So now I can use the fallback annotation, which allows me to provide an alternative. So in this case, I'm adding a fallback annotation and give it a handler. In this annotation, you can also define a method to be called. But I've used a different handler class. In the handler class, I then have a handle method. Now, this will be use case specific, whatever is a potential alternative flow for your use case. Maybe you log a Jira automatically, or you send a mail, or whatever you want to do. What I've decided in my use case to do is I will still store it in the Elasticsearch, but I'll change the index to be a different index, which means I can go back afterwards, look at it, maybe once the server is back up, I can recreate these events. I'm also printing out the status after I've saved it in the failure index. So, excuse me. In this example, I'm now already 3 tries in, and the membership service is still not up. And eventually, I'm going to give up, and then it will fall back to the fallback annotation, and then store it, returning it to a 1. So if I now look at the Elasticsearch index, I can see my failed events there, which means at some point I can firstly create a Kibana dashboard on it if I want to, or I can retry this event. Okay, so next we talk about circuit breaker. I'm also sure most of you know the circuit breaker pattern. It's based upon an actual circuit breaker in your house, where you have a closed state, which means electricity can flow. You have an open state, which means the switch has tripped. And then you have this state in between where you're trying to put the electricity back on, and then it might work or it might just click back down, which is called half open. So in our example, I have a user that wants to see what events that he do, and the Elasticsearch server maybe is down. So we will trip the switch, and from now onwards, anybody that's trying to get their events will fail. And this means we're not only failing fast, but we are failing preemptively. And this allows us to kind of stop it right on the boundary and not even let them into the service so that we can actually recover. So what will happen is we will get the service back up, and at some point that half open state will realize I'm open again. So to do this in the code, fairly simple, add circuit breaker. There's quite a few things that you can configure in this annotation. In my case, I'm basically saying only trip on the node not available exception, which is the exception thrown when Elasticsearch is not available. And then I can basically say how long it should wait before it's trying to put it back on again. In my case, I said wait 10 seconds and then try and put it back on. So here the user is trying to get, I think the first one actually worked. And then I'm going to bring down the Elasticsearch service. And if I try again now, I will get that exception. So the first time I will actually show the exception, which is the node not available exception. And then from then onwards, it fails fast and it just says the circuit breaker is open. And then obviously I can fix the problem, start the server, and it will now kind of retry until at some point we put the switch back on. Okay, and we're back on. Very easy to add a circuit breaker. Okay, and then last of the fault tolerance API annotations is called bulkhead. It gets its name of boats. If you build a boat, you build these compartments so that when you get a leak, it doesn't sink the whole boat, but it only fills water in that one compartment. So we're trying to basically isolate failure. In our case, what we're going to do is we're going to basically say that as an example, our membership service, we know our membership service can only handle 2 concurrent users at a time. So if there's 2 that I'm still busy processing, give a bulkhead exception to anybody else that tries, until I'm finished with one of them, and then I'll let one in again. To simulate this is quite hard because 2 concurrent users, the service is fairly quick, so it's difficult, so I had to use JUnit. To activate it, basically add bulkhead and the number of requests that you can handle. So this is JUnit, not JUnit, JMeter, and I'm hitting this with 100 requests and hoping that at some point there was 3. So in this case, there was 3 at one time, and I'm getting, I've mapped it again with JAX-RS provider to a full 29 too many requests. But again, I can now control the situation. Okay, so that's the fault tolerance API, and we can put the last tick on our principles, isolate failure. And we went through the whole of Eclipse MicroProfile. Something else we note on all of the implementations, we have this concept of fat jars and thin walls, which means I start these servers with a Java minus jar and service. There's no application service that I install. All the configuration lives in here, and that's called a fat jar. I can also build what's called a hollow jar, which is everything but your application. And in the case of Wildfly-swarm, for instance, this hollow is not the full application server. They actually inspect your code and decide which parts of this APIs you are using and build a right-sized jar file. And then you pass in your WAR file, which is now called the thin WAR. And that allows us to put another tick at deploying dependency. And actually, potentially also a culture of automation, because it's much easier now creating these services where I don't have to install an application server. So, looking at the roadmap for MicroProfile, what's on the cards, I think it's been released, a month ago, version 1.4. There's no implementations yet that I know of, but what is added to 1.4 is really just updating up the versions of some of these APIs. And then at the same time, MicroProfile 2 has been released, and that is so that the base toolset that we built around is now aligned with Java EE8, which means we have CDI2, JSON P1.1, and JAX-RS 2.1, which adds a whole bunch of new stuff like HTTP2 support, asynchronous events, and then it also adds JSON-B, which is also part of Java EE8, which is JSON binding. At the moment, if you follow the discussions on the forums on MicroProfile, this is kind of what's been discussed, and potentially we will see APIs around these concerns soon. A lot of streaming stuff, a lot of eventing stuff, and anybody can take part. So if you are keen, go and take part in the forums. So we've looked at 3 of the known implementations, Formtail or Wildfly, Payara, and OpenAPI. But there's actually quite a few implementations already. A lot of the usual suspects like Tommy, Hammock is a new, very lightweight server, Kruger, and a few others. And there might be more. This is the ones that I know of. So to summarize, we've looked at distributed computing, and we've realized we're all doing distributed computing, and we need to get better at it. And to get better at it, we're looking at the principles of microservices and how can we build better distributed services using these APIs. And we've done all of this by adding just this to our dependency graph. And this is not working, but I don't know why. But for some reason, if I it does. This is just the animated GIF of the demo. Oh wait, I'm not connected. For some reason, it works in this mode. But this is a demo where I'm actually on the Raspberry Pi, so you can see that blue is the blue Pi. That's a static web page. It's got links to the presentation and to the source code. And then you can also run this on localhost. All of these servers start on different ports, so they can run on one machine. And then you can test the token. This is again, it's on the actual Raspberry now. It's a bit slower, but it's working. And now I'm going to the yellow Pi, and I'm getting this domain because I have a small router also on there that issues the domain names. So I can test memberships. And what I had to do here for the profiling service, I had to change the configuration to tell it where is the yellow server. So when I start it up, I pass the system property in to say it's not localhost, it's actually yellow. And there's my events. I also stream this you can see the metrics, so that's the Prometheus output of the metrics, that's the health check, that's the OpenAPI YAML file. I also stream the camera, and then you can also see this is the Prometheus server, it's running on the blue Pi, reporting up for all of them. And then this is the Grafana server. In this case now all of them is up. You can see the memberships. These are the three different servers. Okay, so that's me. Thank you for listening. Again, the presentation is available online. You can get it there. The code is available. If you have any questions, send me a tweet or an email. I have a blog where I write about these things every now and then. Yeah, that's me. I think we have time for questions. I don't know where is. Yes.
Which implementation did you prefer?
I'm a fan of all of them. I have a soft spot for Payara. I guess because they don't have a big vendor behind it. Open Liberty is sponsored by IBM, Wildfly sponsored by Red Hat, and these guys are really just doing it because they're loving it, the Payara guys. So I potentially always prefer them, and they're also quite easy, typically always work. They're typically also always easy, especially on Java EE, because they build on top of Glassfish, which is the written implementation. But they all have different parts that's better than the other one. Like I said, Wildfly-swarm allows you to build a right-sized jar file, which allows you to control the size. The way that Open Liberty did their modularity and allows you to put in specific things. In fact, I can show you that quickly. It's awesome. Most of these guys are built on OSGI in the background, apart from Wildfly. And the way in which you can control what parts of OSGI should load with Open Liberty is quite cool. So they have their configuration file. And I'm basically, they call it features, and I'm saying I want Java 8 and MicroProfile. But you can also say, go down into, this is umbrella specifications, but you can say, I'm only using JAX-RS and JCP, and then it also makes a much faster startup time. But yeah, all of them is cool.
Hello? Yeah. So I was wondering, so Spring Boot has similar features where you can pick up practice a lot of the stuff that you want to. So I was wondering, why should we choose MicroProfile as opposed to Spring Boot? Or what are the benefits of MicroProfile versus Spring Boot?
Yeah, so first of all, the Spring Boot is also really just wrapping a bunch of libraries. They haven't built fault tolerance themselves, they're wrapping these things as well. And you can do that on Java EE, and we've done it before MicroProfile. But, so the question is really about standardization. And I guess it's a talk on its own, but standardization is a good thing. And the easiest way to explain that is to look at something outside of the scope of IT. So, if, as an example, if we don't have standardized tire sizes, and you buy your car, and they force you to go and buy the tire that you want from them every time, you don't have an option. That's when we don't standardize stuff. And standardization is basically when something becomes a commodity. It's not the competing thing anymore. Everybody's doing it. Everybody has electricity. Standardize the way in which your plug looks like. So you compete on different things. And that's why standardization is a good thing. And this is just the standardization of the commodities which is now distributed computing. Spring Boot and Spring in general kind of takes part in it, but not really implementing it. So they for instance, are the spec leads and the reference implementation for JBatch. But apart from that, they use JPA, but they wrap it, which means I tie myself into a vendor when I use Spring Boot. Now, you might be okay with that, and then it's fine. For me, I typically choose a standard over an implementation because of the longevity that it gives me. But yeah, you don't have, I think it's all, and a lot of these things is influenced by the Spring development model. That's it. If you have any more questions, please come find me. Okay.
Can we just give him a round of applause? Thank you very much. So ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have a quick 15 minutes break.